They say love is beautiful, that it's what makes life worth living, that without it, we're incomplete. But if that's true, why does it hurt so much? Why do we lose ourselves in it? Why do we fear losing those we love more than we fear losing ourselves? Why does something so pure so often lead to jealousy, desperation, obsession, collapse? Arthur Schopenhauer didn't romanticize love. He dissected it with the sharpest blade imaginable, truth. To him, love wasn't divine. It wasn't sacred. It wasn't even noble. It was a trick, a biological trick, played on us by nature so that we keep reproducing, even as it destroys us emotionally. He called romantic love the ultimate delusion, a temporary madness that hijacks the mind in the name of a desire we don't truly control. Love is a serious mental disease, Plato once said. Schopenhauer agreed, but went even further. To him, love isn't just madness, it's manipulation. You don't fall in love because someone completes your soul. You fall in love because your body wants to reproduce with a specific genetic configuration that might make strong offspring. And in service of that goal, your emotions are hijacked. He wrote, "The ultimate aim of all love affairs, whether passionate or lukewarm, whether happy or unhappy, is actually more important than all other ends in human life. It is the future composition of the human race." In other words, your heartbreak, your longing, your emotional chaos, none of it is about you. It's about your biology, your programming, your submission to an ancient instinct that doesn't care about your peace of mind. That's why love makes you irrational, why it overrides your intelligence, why you ignore red flags, why you chase someone who hurts you, why you call it passion when it's really possession. Because it was never about truth, it was about desire. And desire, Schopenhauer said, is suffering. That's the foundation of his entire philosophy. To want is to hurt, to crave is to bleed, to fall in love is to enter a contract with suffering. He wrote, "All striving springs from lack, from a deficiency, from a state of suffering." So what does love do? It creates lack. It makes you feel incomplete without the other. It tricks you into thinking you were born with a hole, and they are the missing piece, and you believe it. You believe it so deeply, you're willing to destroy your boundaries, your priorities, even your dignity, just to hold on to the illusion. But that illusion is expensive, and the price is always pain. The moment you love, you fear. Fear of loss, fear of betrayal, fear of change, fear of not being enough. You become reactive, attached, addicted, and love, which was supposed to be your salvation, becomes your prison. Schopenhauer saw it clearly. What we call romantic love is just a mask over a far darker impulse, the will to life, the unconscious urge to continue the species at any cost, not to create joy, but to create more life, even if it means sacrificing the current one. You ever wonder why breakups feel like death? Because a part of you truly dies, not your body, but the fantasy, the imagined future, the imagined happiness, the imagined forever. And when that illusion collapses, so do you, because your happiness was never grounded. It was projected onto another human being who, just like you, was lost and searching and wounded. Love makes you think you found the one, but what you've really found is a mirror. And when that mirror breaks, you don't just grieve the person, you grieve the version of yourself you thought existed in their eyes. Schopenhauer wouldn't comfort you. He wouldn't tell you there's someone better. He'd tell you you were under a spell and now you're waking up. That's not cruelty, that's mercy. Because when you stop believing, that love will complete you. You stop giving others the power to break you. Here's the paradox. The more you idolize love, the more it consumes you. But the moment you understand it, see through it, it loses its power. You stop chasing forever. You start asking, what am I sacrificing to keep this illusion alive? You stop asking, do they love me? And start asking, do I even love myself in this dynamic? You stop mistaking emotional chaos for meaning, intensity for depth, possession for passion, and in that clarity, you find something rarer than love. You find yourself. You don't always fall in love with what's good for you. In fact, you rarely do. You fall for what activates you, what feels familiar, what feels intense, what stings. You call it chemistry. You call it fate. You call it connection. But what if it's just repetition? What if it's just your wounds trying to relive themselves? Schopenhauer said, pleasure is never as deep as pain, and love is the most refined way of suffering. Let that sink in. Love, as we experience it, is often a form of emotional masochism, a beautiful self-destruction. We crave the people who mirror our chaos because it feels like home. You know what's safe. You know what's healthy. But that doesn't excite you. What excites you is the unpredictable, the unavailable, the slightly cruel, the cold glance, the hot and cold silence. Why? Because somewhere along the way, you associated pain with value, challenge with love, confusion with depth, and now you chase what breaks you. You mistake emotional instability for passion. You think the emotional roller coaster means the love is stronger. But Schopenhauer would say, it only means the delusion is deeper. Desire, in his view, was inherently irrational. You want what you want, not because it makes sense, but because it disturbs you. It pulls you out of balance. It triggers your longing. It awakens something old and unsolved and unnamed. And you call that love, but it's not love. It's compulsion. It's addiction. It's the nervous system seeking chaos. Because calm feels empty. You're not falling in love. You're falling into a pattern, and patterns don't care about your peace. They care about completion. Your unconscious mind doesn't want happiness. It wants familiar pain. It knows how to survive. So you chase ghosts. You romanticize rejection. You fantasize about people who make you beg for crumbs. Because crumbs are what you're used to. And when someone comes along who is stable, available, present dash, you reject them. Not because they're wrong, but because they don't activate your trauma. That's a tragedy. The person who would love you right feels boring. And the one who keeps you anxious feels real, because the nervous system only knows intensity. It doesn't know peace, yet. Schopenhauer saw this as the core flaw. In romantic idealism, he believed that the object of love is never truly known. It's imagined, it's exaggerated, it's created by the one who desires. You project, you build a god from a human. You fill in their gaps with your fantasies. And when they fail to live up to them, you collapse. But it was never about them. It was always about what you wanted them to be. We don't fall in love with people. We fall in love with the feeling. They awaken in us. And if that feeling is rooted in pain, we'll follow it, even if it destroys us. This is why love feels so addictive, why heartbreak feels like withdrawal. Because the high you were chasing was never about truth. It was about escape. You weren't trying to love. You were trying to feel something strong enough to drown out the silence inside you. And here's the hardest truth. You were never really in love with them. You were in love with how broken they made you feel. Because being broken felt alive. because the chaos distracted you from your own emptiness. But now, you see it. Now, you feel the pattern. And that's where everything begins to shift. Schopenhauer believed that most human suffering comes not from the world, but from our expectations of it. Love, to him, was a contract we never read, a cruel trick, where nature makes us believe we're chasing happiness, but we're really just chasing biological continuity. And in that pursuit, we overinvest, overattach, over-romanticize, and suffer. But once you see the machinery, the illusion breaks. You stop blaming them. You stop blaming yourself. You start recognizing that the pain wasn't personal, it was inevitable. As long as your idea of love was built on fantasy. So what now? You rebuild, not your image, not your appeal, not your ability to be loved. You rebuild your awareness. You ask, what part of me seeks out chaos? What part of me fears peace? What does it cost me to feel alive? In pain? And then, you do the hardest thing of all. You stop chasing what breaks you. You stop calling toxicity intensity. You stop calling unavailability mystery. You stop calling pain proof. And you begin to see that real love is not addictive, not unstable, not violent. It is calm. It is clear. It is consistent, which means at first it feels strange. It feels like nothing because you've never felt nothing in a safe way before, but now you can. Now you know. That craving is not connection. Obsession is not affection. Suffering is not romance. Now you know why you kept reaching for what hurt you and why you don't have to anymore. Now you know how to stop. You were told that somewhere out there is the one, the perfect match, the soulmate, the missing half of your soul. And so you search, swipe, fall, lose yourself, break, start again, always chasing something that was never real. Schopenhauer saw this fantasy for what it truly was, a trap. He believed that the idea of the one is not based on reality, but on a deep, unconscious need to justify desire. You feel drawn to someone and you don't understand why. So your mind invents meaning. It calls it fate. It calls it destiny. It calls it love. But what it really is biology, programming, projection. You don't love them. You love what you've assigned to them. You filled in the blanks with hope, memory, fear, fantasy. And when they disappoint you, you don't grieve them. You grieve your illusion. You grieve what could have been, what should have been, what you needed them to be. But they were never that. They never could be, because they were never the one. They were just a mirror, reflecting the pieces of yourself. You still don't fully know. Schopenhauer believed that most of our emotional suffering comes not from the object of love, but from the ideas we attach to them. He said, love is nothing but a deception of the senses, intended to trick us into fulfilling nature's agenda. And what is that agenda? To reproduce, to bind, to continue the species, not to make you happy. Nature doesn't care if your heart breaks. Nature doesn't care if you feel lonely. Nature only cares that you mate, pass on genes, and die. That's the bleak truth. But within that bleakness is liberation. Because once you realize that the soulmate story was sold to you, you stop chasing ghosts. You stop trying to extract eternal meaning from temporary people. You stop demanding that another person complete a self you haven't finished building. And in that realization, you begin to return to yourself. You stop looking outward for wholeness. You stop worshiping compatibility. You stop measuring your worth by how desired you are. You start asking better questions. Why do I want them? What need are they filling? Who do I become around them? And is that someone I respect? That's the real revolution. Not finding the one, but becoming your own foundation. So that love becomes a choice, not a survival mechanism. Schopenhauer didn't believe in happily ever after. He believed in clarity, in detachment, in emotional sovereignty. He saw love as a force. Powerful, yes, but dangerous if unchecked. He wrote, "Every parting gives a foretaste of death, every reunion a hint of the resurrection." That's how strong love is. It plays with your life force, it mimics meaning, it simulates transcendence, but if you give it too much weight, you collapse under it. So what's the alternative? Is it to stop loving? Not at all. But it is to love without worship, to desire without delusion, to connect without collapsing. You begin to see love not as salvation, but as a mirror, not as your reason to live, but as a reflection of how well you already do. You no longer search for completion. You search for resonance. You no longer fear losing people. You fear losing yourself trying to keep them. You no longer ask, are they the one? You ask, am I betraying myself to hold on to this story? When the answer is yes, you let go. Without rage, without bitterness, without a dramatic speech. Just the quiet, steady recognition that the version of you who needed this no longer exists, and the new you, they walk alone, but never feel lost. You start to see love like the wind. It comes, it moves, it leaves, and none of that says anything about your worth. The fantasy begins to dissolve. You realize that love was never supposed to save you. It was supposed to show you where you still needed healing. And now that you see it, you're free. You're not bitter. You're awake. You're not cold. You're clear. You're not empty. You're finally full of yourself. Desire is a wound that never fully heals. The more you want, the more you suffer. That's the core of Schopenhauer's philosophy. He believed that to live is to lack, to feel incomplete, to chase, to hunger, and to suffer for it. Nowhere is this more true than in love, because love magnifies desire. It takes a single want, to be seen, to be held, to be chosen, and turns it into obsession. You don't just want their affection. You want their attention, their time, their loyalty, their forever. And the moment the desire appears, so does fear. Fear of losing it, fear of not being enough, fear of change, fear of abandonment. And so you cling harder, you chase faster, you bend deeper, you become small in the name of something you thought would make you feel whole, but it never does. Schopenhauer wrote, "Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world." When you're in love, that person becomes your world, your happiness, your center, your mirror, and any threat to them feels like a threat to your identity. This is not love. This is dependency. This is what Schopenhauer meant. When he said that love is an illusion of need, it tricks you into thinking that your value comes from what you hold instead of who you are. But what if you stopped holding so tightly? What if you loved without needing? What if you desired without clinging? What if you felt connection without possession? Could you do it? Or has love become too tied to control? The truth is, you don't need most of what you want. You don't need to be chosen to feel worthy. You don't need constant affirmation to feel secure. You don't need a fairy tale to live fully. But you've been trained to believe otherwise. You've been told that more is the answer. More love, more passion, more effort. But Schopenhauer offers a different truth. To want less is to hurt less. Let that settle. Let it shake the foundation of everything you were taught about love. Because the more you want from someone, the more they can control you. The more you invest, the more you fear loss. And the more you fear, the more you compromise your needs, your standards, your peace. You think you're loving deeply, but you're actually negotiating with fear. You're trading your calm for chaos just to keep a grip on something. That was never stable. That's not love. That's survival. And survival doesn't feel safe. It feels desperate. So what's the alternative? To shut down? To detach completely? Not at all. It's not about closing your heart. It's about opening your eyes. It's about seeing that most of your pain in love came not from what someone did, but from what you expected them to be. You expected wholeness. You expected clarity. You expected them to fill in the blanks you never learned to live with. And when they couldn't, you suffered. But now you know better. Now you know that the deepest freedom comes not from finding someone new, but from wanting less from those around you. Not because you've become cold, but because you've become clear. You no longer see love as salvation. You see it as a choice. And choices require responsibility, not projection, not dependence, not fantasy. So you begin to move differently. You don't demand constant reassurance. You don't mistake silence for abandonment. You don't confuse disagreement with betrayal. You simply let people be. And more importantly, you let yourself be, without judgment, without need, without the exhausting chase for a feeling that never lasts anyway. That's how peace begins. Not by getting what you want, but by needing less to feel whole. That's how power returns, not by control dash, but by release. That's how love heals, not by being everything, but by not demanding everything. And when you reach this place, something shifts. You're no longer a slave to your desires. You're no longer manipulated by what others offer or withhold. You stand in your own center, and from there, you can finally love, freely, quietly, without fear. Not because you found perfection, but because you've made peace with imperfection. And that is love without pain. You've spent years chasing love, like it was the answer, the solution, the missing piece, the reason to endure the pain of life. But Schopenhauer would tell you, love is not the answer, it's the question. And most people are too afraid to answer it honestly. Why do you want what you want? What are you really looking for? A partner? Or a cure for your emptiness? Affection? Or a mirror to distract you from yourself? You thought love would save you. But love, in the way you've been taught to pursue it, doesn't save. It steals. It takes time. It takes clarity. It takes energy. And if you're not awake, it takes you. But now, you're waking up. You see the illusion. You feel the pattern. You remember your name. Beneath the craving, you no longer chase love because you think it will complete you. You accept love only when it respects your wholeness. Schopenhauer didn't want you to stop loving. He wanted you to stop suffering in the name of a lie. He wanted you to pull back the curtain and see love for what it is. Powerful. Yes, beautiful at times, but dangerous if misunderstood. So now you move differently. You no longer idealize people, you observe them. You no longer collapse into connection. You remain centered within it. You no longer say, "This person is everything." You say, "I am everything," with or without them. That shift changes everything. You stop overgiving. You stop begging to be seen. You stop writing poetry for people who don't know how to read it. You hold your own gaze. you honor your own peace. And from that place, you may love again, but never from lack, only from fullness, only from choice, only from truth. If this message struck something inside you, don't let it fade. Share this video with someone who's still trapped in a love that feels like slow death, someone who needs to hear that they're not broken, they're just waking up. Comment below, "I choose peace over longing." Let that be your new vow. And if this video made you breathe differently, then keep going. This was not the destination. It was the door. The next step is waiting. The journey continues in the next video.